Starting off the Bobcast here for Week 14 with softball head coach Bill Vasko. Coach, your team on last Wednesday swept by Fairmont State, and then in this past weekend going on the road to get a couple of sweeps yourselves, beating AB and then Notre Dame. What did you make overall of your past week, given that it's kind of started your hectic season right now with the games coming thick and fast?
Yeah, well, obviously we were pretty disappointed in the way that we performed against Fairmont, being at home, and we knew that that was a big doubleheader with Fairmont right there with us towards the top of the standings. We just didn't have a good day in any aspect of what we did that particular day, so again, that was disappointing, but we were able to have a couple of good days of practice heading into the weekend and able to bounce back, able to get two from a gritty AB team. Played okay there, did what we needed to do, and then on Sunday, played really well, probably the best that we've played this season so far in every phase of the game. Put it all together to get two good wins against a quality team there again in our division. So that was pretty huge. So really happy in the way that we finished up the week, especially considering how it started.
And so we'll get to that start right here. In the game against Fairmont, both of them a 10-4 loss in Game 1 and then a 3-0 loss in Game 2. Where it seemed in both games where it was just kind of missed opportunities from you guys, leaving runners on base or mistakes on the base paths or not getting a correct call from the officiating and the umpires there. And Fairmont, on their own behalf, they kind of just took their opportunities. They would get that big hit to score across a couple runs. Is that just kind of the nature of this sport where, one team just doesn't have it on the given day and the other team does?
Yeah, it definitely plays a part in it. I just didn't think our energy level matched their energy level. They came out, and again, every team that we play for the first time this year is the first time that we've experienced what that team is like in terms of the style that they play, just the personality of their team. And Fairmont came out and just put it to us pretty early. And like you said, we didn't take advantage of any opportunities, and I thought overall we played pretty flat that day with not a lot of energy. Didn't hit real well, so things just didn't go our way, and it compounded there in the first game. We battled a little bit in the second game and hung around, but still just wasn't able to do enough with the bats on that particular day. Kudos to Fairmont's pitchers, kind of keep us in check there, but we just against a good opponent there, just didn't show up that particular day and didn't do the things that we need to. And it's, part of it's us and part of it's the other team, and hopefully we can make adjustments next time we see them.
One player that kind of stood out to me, at least in that game, was Sierra Sanderson, who in the first game hit a triple out to right field and then scored on a wild pitch right after that, and also came in the second game and pitched the final inning and held them to just one hit, no runs. How much has her versatility and then also her speed, both on the base paths and in the outfield, been useful for you guys coming in as a first-year player?
It's been really helpful. I mean, we've been trying to figure out ways to get her more involved, both at the plate and in the field, and hoping she hasn't had a lot of opportunities on the mound just because, a couple of our other pitchers have been doing pretty well, so it's limited some time there for her, but she's taken advantage of, the opportunities that she's had at the plate and on the bases and done well defensively and given herself a chance to stay in the lineup. So, and we've mixed things around a little bit with people, but it's, trying to find the best combination and the best matchups every single series that we have that gives us an opportunity to win, and she's been a big part of that.
So we'll get into now. You go on the road on Saturday. You go out to Philippi, West Virginia, and an AB team that you pretty much dominated here at home and a couple of big wins a few weeks ago, and they made it a lot tougher this weekend, a 2-1 pretty tight victory in Game 1 for you guys, and then a 4-1 victory in Game 2, but certainly no easier. What was it from AB that showed you, going back a few weeks where it wasn't really close games, and now you really had to fight for those 2 wins?
We've said all along, just from watching video of AB's other games and matching up against them, I mean, they're a good team. They've got good players. I think they're probably a little demoralized because, their record doesn't show how good they are. But, I think they probably feel like with us being a new team to the Mountain East that they've got a chance to compete and take wins from us. And, it's kind of funny. I told my assistant coach Shock, I said, I don't think we play very well when it's sunny and hot out because we've been flat every time that the weather's been really, really nice. And, of course, yesterday it was a little chillier and overcast and everything. So it was their senior day. We knew it was going to be a long trip for us, and getting on a bus and going down a windy, curvy road to open up. I mean, we did what we needed to do to get the wins. It's always tough going against an opponent who's not doing well and has lost a lot of games to really get up for that. So, kudos to some of our players who stepped up in those games that I'm sure you're going to mention that, we did those things and, got good performances on the mound to keep them in check and just did enough to win offensively. But, hats off to AB as well for coming out and being a scrappy team and, still putting their best foot forward despite the season they've had so far.
So one of those players that I did want to bring up was Sidney Theobald on the mound, who pitched 6 innings in Game 1, gave up just 3 hits and 1 earned run. And pretty important that it was just the 1 earned run because the offense for you guys wasn't exactly flowing. It was a couple of solo home runs that got you into the lead, and Sidney kind of shut them down. You bring in Shauna Leonard to bring out the save in that Game 1. But for both of those, they've been pretty much your top 2 starters this year, both Sidney and Shauna. But how big was it for Sidney to keep you guys really in that game and get you into the lead and hold on to it?
That was huge. She's done a great job when we've asked her to start the first game, and she put in a lot of quality innings on that particular day to allow us to not have to go to the bullpen as early. So that's always huge. The more innings that we can get out of a starter, the better. And she kept us right there with it. Lucky for us that we got those home runs to kind of give us a little bit of advantage, and I felt like we got a little comfortable there, which kind of set the tone for the rest of the day. But, Sid's done a great job as a freshman coming in and keeping teams at bay and give us every opportunity to be able to go out and get the wins. And, I wish we could give a little more support to our pitchers sometimes than what we do. But, if we can limit what the other team scores and score just enough, then we'll keep taking the wins.
Absolutely, you take them any way you can get them. So in that first game with the offense, it was Sam Carver and Aaliyah Ramey both with the solo shots, and then Ramey in the second game hit a big 3-run home run that really opened the game up at 4-1. So I want to talk first about Sam, who I looked at the stats today and last night, and I was a little bit surprised in that she's leading the team in average. I wrote down that she's kind of quietly leading the team because she's just a player where, she's so good that she almost goes unnoticed in how good she is and how, important she is to this team. Is that something that you see too, where you kind of just expect her to go out on the field and perform? Or like you don't have to motivate her or talk her up as much as maybe some other players?
Yeah, she's always been, in my 3 years here, been very consistent in everything she does, especially at the plate. I think a couple of weeks ago she was struggling just a little bit, made a couple of adjustments in practice with her swing, and then she's gotten right back into it. So she's done a good job of just continually getting good at-bats over and over again and, doing what we need. And, we've had times throughout the year where, you pull up the stats and you see a couple of different people at the top and a couple people slide down, and then it changes again. But, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, she hit a couple of games where she just wasn't swinging it real well, and then ever since then she's been real consistent and steadily climbed. I think a couple of weeks ago when I looked, she was right around 8th, and then she's just climbed all the way to the top. So kudos to not only her but everybody. We challenged all of our hitters after Fairmont that, in order for us to continue to do well this season and stay atop the North Division, we have to hit better, and we've got to keep going out and figuring out ways to hit the other team's best pitchers. I mean, especially if we continue to be at the top of the division, we're going to see everybody's best game and best pitchers, and we've got to be able to come out and swing the bat better against those types of pitchers. So, that's been a big focus of what we've done in practice is challenge our hitters. And I really think, especially after Fairmont, with the offensive weekend that we had, our hitters took that challenge to heart, and I hope that it continues. So I'm hoping that, we haven't even scratched the surface yet of what we can do offensively, and that we'll continue to improve throughout the year and see other people start to challenge Sam there at the top and keep raising our overall team average and what we're doing of getting people on base. And then where we've struggled a little is hitting those runners in. We've had a ton of runners in scoring position that, and I looked, our average with runners in scoring position is actually pretty good. Like you think about all the opportunities we've had, our average is pretty good with it. But, as a head coach, it's never enough.
Absolutely not. You always want everyone to get in from scoring in position. So we get in slightly to the Sunday games against Notre Dame last night, which, as you said, a pretty long drive out to Ohio for you guys. Both getting there and then coming back last night was a 7-0 victory in Game 1 and then an 8-3 victory in Game 2. And I want to slightly go back to Aaliyah Ramey, who against AB homered in both the games and then homered as well in the first game against Notre Dame for a homer in 3 straight games for her after, she's been pretty good all season but hasn't quite had that power that she kind of showed this weekend. And then she had 4 hits in that Game 1, 5 RBI, just an overall great day for her and a great weekend in total. Has she made those adjustments that you talked about with Sam of unlocking some of that power in her? Is that something she's done on the practice field, or just something that you've really gotten into her with the games?
No, so yeah, same exact thing. I mean, she was struggling a little bit a couple weeks ago and then kind of found something, got into a little bit of a groove, and then just kept continuing to challenge. And, she had one day in practice last week where we were challenging everybody and struggled a little bit and bounced right back from that after Fairmont had 2 really good days of practice. And I just think overall, in terms of her confidence level over the past several games, it's continued to improve, where even when she doesn't have a good at-bat, her attitude has remained positive, and she's made any adjustments that she needs to and just keeps getting back in there and getting good swings off of the pitchers and been able to connect in her power zone and put some balls over the fence. So really happy with that for her to be able to do that. And, I think that's going to be an overall trend for all of our hitters, that we keep making some minor adjustments and everybody gets their confidence going a little bit, that we're going to continue to swing the bat well and get even better.
And so another player that, similar to Sam Carver, to me at least, that almost goes unnoticed in how good she is sometimes, is Taylor McCarty, who had 3 hits and hit a home run in that first game where, against Fairmont, we talked about, some hitters weren't taking opportunities. She took her opportunities in that game, got a few hits on that day. But how good has she also been where, a couple of weeks ago she missed a couple of games and then just coming back in the lineup almost seamlessly and getting some multi-hits?
Yeah, for sure. Taylor's worked hard in practice as well and continued to modify what she's done. And, the big thing for her is just to be on time with her swing and get the barrel to it. And, when she makes contact, she can hit the ball hard. So, and she's been a great leader overall on the field, both on the offensive and defensive side. So, it was tough not having her there when she missed a couple of those games. So having her back at it and then also improving at the plate is definitely a big boost overall to how the team does on the field. And I'm happy to see that. And, again, I just expect it to continue to get even better for her as well.
And so, of course, as we do almost every week, we have to bring up Shauna Leonard, who was 1 out away from a shutout against AB in Game 2, and with 2 outs, they got a couple of hits against her and scored that run, and then she pitched the shutout in the 7-0 win against Notre Dame. And I kind of worry at the end of the season here that we're going to just run out of things to say about Shauna with how good she's been. But certainly, again, just another of couple really good performances from her over the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, continue to go out and just limit the other team. Good pitching always beats good hitting, and if you can keep the other team from scoring, we got a pretty good shot at winning. So, AB scratched one out there at the end where we kind of thought we had it wrapped up, and they kudos to them for making a little bit of a run there at the end. But she pitched really well against A&B, held them in check the entire game there, and then on Sunday against Notre Dame, she came in and did the job, started game one, set the tone for the day to just really shut them down and demoralize them on offense, which I think was a big part in, us. We took advantage of a lot of things offensively against Notre Dame. I mean, we just flat out hit it well. But Shauna really set the tone because, as we gathered momentum on offense, she was really, like I said, demoralizing them offensively, and just set the tone for the day where they just kind of felt like they weren't going to be able to do anything against us. And then, she came in and finished game two as well to shut them down and keep them at bay. And just, both ends of the doubleheader really limiting Notre Dame to give us a chance to go out. And, we had an offensive explosion there, and, makes it a little bit easier when you got some room to breathe there. But, she's done a great job of really just putting the wraps on the other team, so give us an opportunity to go out there and do what we need to do to keep getting W's.
Absolutely. And so one final player that I want to bring up from the weekend is Kat Treff, who went 1 for 7 in the first 3 games over the weekend. You took her out of the leadoff spot to start, and then she really came to life in that game 2 against Notre Dame. She went 3 for 4. Was that something where she was just kind of in a funk and you wanted to, motivate her a little bit or put her in a different spot where she could affect the game more, and then she just was able to come to life in that last game from the road trip?
Yeah, I think just sometimes, Kat gets a little hard on herself when she doesn't do well, and, putting her down at the bottom, it's not any slight towards what she can do in terms of offensive, but maybe takes a little pressure off of her. And when you kind of, you try to set the lineup a little bit where your number 9 hitter is actually kind of a leadoff after that first inning, really you only lead off one true time at the very beginning of the game, and putting her down there at the bottom still gets her into an opportunity where she's leading off innings a lot of the time and turns the lineup over back to the top. Where we have players who we think can advance her, and with her speed, if she can get on, she can steal bases. So she offers a lot of versatility in what she can do in terms of bunting and slapping and hitting. And it's really good to see like she's mixing that up and being successful in all 3 phases of that and finding ways to get on and also drive in runners from that spot. So, it wasn't necessarily so much anything to do, physically with what she was doing offensively. It was just a matter of, taking a little pressure off and just finding a spot where she feels comfortable and doesn't have to do too much and just goes out and finds a way to get on base. And, again, even though her primary role is to get on base and steal bases, she's done really well, I think, when she's had runners in scoring position of changing up her approach a little bit and figuring out a way to drive in some of those runs as well. So that's really helped.
And certainly something that often gets lost when you're talking about sports is that, a good majority of it is mental. It's not just your physical aspects, but you have to be in the right mindset and just be able to go out and perform from that standpoint. So hopefully the listeners can stick with me here as your week coming up. Doubleheader Wednesday against West Virginia Wesleyan, and then Friday against Notre Dame, another doubleheader. Saturday against Concord, Sunday against Glenville. I guess if you have any kind of reprieve, all of those are at home for you guys, so no road trips, but 4 games within, 5-6 days of each other. How is it going to be managing that player workload of being able to use your bench? And I saw that Ryan Darling came up pretty big in game 2. She went 2 for 4. You brought her into the starting lineup. But the rest of the players, all the players on this team, really going to have to step up at some point with just the amount of games that are going to happen this week.
Yeah, we've tried to mix in and give some other people opportunities when we needed to get them either work or again if someone else wasn't doing real well or struggling in a specific game against a specific pitcher. We don't have a real deep bench because we don't have a large roster this year, but it's definitely going to be important. I mean, we talk to the team all the time that everybody has a role, and at some point everybody's number is going to be called to do something. Whether it's to come in on defense, to pinch hit, to pinch run. Again, if somebody's struggling a little bit to switch up the lineup or the defensive alignment a little bit. So, with the size of our roster, there's opportunities for people to step in and do something. Like you mentioned, Ryan did a good job with that when she's had those opportunities. And, it's going to be a long week. I'm just hopeful we come out with all of these home games where our energy level is up every game, and these games are all important. Even though we're going to see some opponents from the Southern Division this week, which we haven't seen yet for the most part. All those games are important for the overall standings in the North Division for us. So. It's going to be an interesting week, seeing some new opponents and, having a lot of games all at once. So we're going to need all hands on deck, everybody being able to jump in and do their part to propel the team to some success this week. But really looking forward to, just taking it one game at a time, and then we can reflect back next week and see how it went.
Absolutely, and certainly a big segment next week with all those games coming in. And one last thing I wanted to mention for anyone listening is that Saturday you guys will have your senior day against Concord here at home, and hopefully get out a big crowd and hope for some nice weather that all the fans can come out and enjoy and celebrate the seniors that have given their career here. For this softball team. And I want to thank you for taking the time out of your week here after your long road trip last night to come in at 8 a.m. this morning to come and talk to me.
No problem. I appreciate you having me on and look forward to talking to you again next week.
Back on the Bobcast this week, and I'm here with baseball head coach Anthony Williams. Coach, a 3-game set against Alderson Broadus this weekend, and what would have been a 4-game set if not for a couple of weather delays yesterday on Bob Wells Field. 17-1 and 14-4 losses, and sandwiched in between them was an 8-5 victory in Game 2 on Saturday. What did you make of your team's performance this weekend? Are you disheartened at all by the double-digit losses, or you still feel like, we just got beat by a better team, kind of?
No, I mean, first of all, not disheartened by the double-digit losses. I think that in these weekend series, when you're scheduled to play 4 games, things can get tilted in a hurry when you're trying to save pitching or you're short on pitching, and then you're going and putting guys out there or in positions that maybe they normally wouldn't be. So wasn't worried about that. Obviously, we got off to a rough start, as going back to last week with some COVID stuff and not having the opportunity to practice last week, but and we got off to a rough start in Game 1. So whenever your first starter of the weekend, has a rough outing, it kind of sets a tough tone for the rest of the weekend. But to the guys' credit, we bounced back in Game 2 and did what we needed to do. And I think the old adage, you're never as bad as your worst game, you're never as good as your best game, kind of rang true. I think for us, or we knew that we made Alderson Broadus probably look a little bit better than they were in that first game, and you gotta tip your cap and give them credit. I mean, they took advantage of our mistakes and they did a good job of putting the ball in play. Their number one arm on Saturday was very good. Did a good job against us, but our guys battled. We did the things we needed to do to walk away from Saturday with a split, getting the win in the second game. And I think like I told the guys, it's not it's not total strokes or total runs. Like, it's we were 1-1 after Saturday. So had an opportunity to come back on Sunday and try to win the series. As you alluded to, some weather issues and things. Tip your cap to them again in the first game on Sunday. They played well. Took advantage of some miscues that we had, and then we just weren't able to get that fourth one in. So we'll reschedule maybe later in the season for that one, or kind of see how the rest of things play out. So.
Absolutely, and certainly a weekend where it's very much a baseball weekend in terms of how the games played out, in terms of one team getting out to a big win in the first game, and then you guys immediately coming back, basically a half-hour break, coming back in the second win. In that 17-1 loss, and it was AB, just consistent offense. They scored in every inning except for the seventh. But what was, I could hear from the press box in the dugout in the middle of that game, you were really trying to rile your guys up and get them motivated. What was your message to them? Obviously, I might have to censor it a little bit, but what was the message to them to motivate them and get them back on track in that game?
Well, I think it starts with just trying to play the game 0-0, and we've said that before. When things get tilted, you can't be chasing 6, 7, 8 runs at a time. You got to just try to, have that zoom focus in on what my next at bat is, the next pitch I need to make, the next play I need to make on defense. So just really trying to take our jobs seriously out there and not give anything away. And for some of these guys, especially like the seniors, you don't want to give at bats away that you're not going to get back. So take every at bat like it's your last, and really not just give things away because the game is tilted right now, and you got to play all 21 outs. And as people have seen to watch us play, we've given up big leagues and we've been able to come back from being down big. So you never know in this game. Yeah,
certainly one where you can never give up. So then we go into game 2, and Franco Velasquez got the mound in that start, and he pitched 5 2/3 innings, 5 runs, 4 of them earned. But I wrote down, it really doesn't tell the full story of how Franco pitched that day. In the 3rd inning, he got bases loaded and nobody out, and got out of it with 2 runs, and it really could have been even better than that. And then in the 6th inning, bases loaded and 2 outs, and just one single off of an AB bat scored 2 runs, and he was really disheartened with giving up that hit. But he pitched himself really well out of some situations and really gave you guys that chance to win in that game.
Yeah, I thought Franco threw the ball pretty well. We needed him to. Rotation has certainly been jumbled up with some injuries and other things. So we needed Franco to step up again, and he did that just like he did last weekend. I think against Glenville. So, Franco's a competitor. He's fiery out there. I think the guys feed off of that, and it's fun to play defense behind a guy like him, where he's fired up on the mound. He wants to make pitches. He's going to throw strikes, and he's not going to. He's going to have a couple walks here and there, but he for the most part, he's filling up the strike zone and putting balls in play, and the guys are excited to play defense behind him. But more or less, it's just like that jolt of energy for the team, knowing that your guy's out there giving his all. And I think he went over 100 pitches. First starter I think that we've had this year go up over 100 pitches, and we needed every one of those pitches to hold on to that lead. And then after that we were without our closer this weekend, and Nate Vermillion wasn't with us, so we had to go to the next guy down the line that was available that could throw strikes for us, and that was Nick Botsaris, and I'm certainly proud of him and his effort, and to be able to go out there and just compete and throw strikes and help us close that win out.
Absolutely, and so talking about Nick, pitched an inning in the 3rd. He came in for Franco after that single from AB, where they still had men at 1st and 3rd, and it still was a threat, and he came in, he shut the door on them, and then also picked up the save in that 7th inning. Also, as a first-year player coming in, that's his first collegiate save that he's had. How big was it for you to have him step up? And like you said, your closer was out for this week. He came in and he did his job perfectly almost.
Yeah, well, with everything we've been dealing with, we've been kind of preaching that next man mentality for a couple weeks now, and I think guys are certainly buying into that. There's a role for everybody on this team, and you just kind of have to be bought into, being prepared for whenever your situation or your number may be called, so or a situation may arise that you may be needed, and Nick certainly did that. He had, like everybody else, didn't have a week of practice and came out on Saturday and just had to be ready to go, do whatever he could to be ready for his team. And just proud of his performance, obviously, but just you mentioned first collegiate save. We have 6 saves on the season. They're all from guys from Archbishop Spalding High School. So Nate Vermillion and Nick Butzars were class of 2020 teammates at Spalding. So we've had all 6 saves coming from that high school program. So Nate was out this week, and that's been his role, and Nick certainly did a great job filling in for him.
Absolutely, and continuing on kind of the next man up mentality, Chase Odell came in. He started at second base. With your middle infield kind of banged up as well as Nick Benitez moved over to shortstop. He stepped up big on offense, got a really big hit in that second game for a 2-run RBI. And then also defense as well. He made a really nice diving catch over in a big out to help out Franco. Is he kind of, you've been saying next man up mentality, is he's another one under that kind of category where he's played in games this year, but now this weekend he's really had to show his worth for this team?
Yeah, we've been out without our starting middle infield in Jared Mouton and Brett Fogel for some time now, and what it's done is it's allowed other guys like Chase Odell, it's allowed us to get an extended look at him and see where he's at, and how he handles the level of pitching, I guess, in our league. And he's done a great job at the plate on being able to deliver some big hits. And he's got a lot of things to continue to work on defensively, but he's going to put in the time and effort to do that. So it's been good. I've been proud of Chase. Certainly, for a guy like him, that really wasn't getting much playing time early on in the season to now all of a sudden be thrust into the lineup, be counted on every day. It's nice to know that the stage wasn't too big for him, so to speak, and he's been able to come out and hold his own, and is doing a great job for his team right now.
And so kind of on the opposite end, one guy that's been there for a long time, and Ryan Roll, has come up with a lot of big moments for this team over the years. One thing that I really stood out to me throughout the series is that, you can tell with his weight loss that he had in the offseason on the base paths, he just runs a lot smoother, and it's a weapon for you guys now where, a single that's into shallow right or left or center can score him from second base, and that's really helped him this year. As you said, moving him to third base this year, he wants to play at the next level as well. But a big weekend for him as well, just showing off what he can do.
Well, it was nice to get Ryan back. We didn't have him last weekend. He was dealing with a sprained ankle. I think he suffered in the West Virginia State series. So we didn't have him for 4 games last week. He was eager to get back. He's one of those guys you want to get him back in the lineup so he stops bugging you on the bench. But I mean that in a good way because Ryan's great to have around. And we're definitely not making the Ricky Henderson comparisons to this guy by any means. But he's doing a good job of taking advantage of balls in the dirt, advancing. He's taking advantage of some delay steal opportunities. I think he's really bought into that and seen some success coming from that. I think he's got a 100% success rate there on his delayed steals. So, hey, when you're a guy that's you don't have blazing speed, but you're a good base runner and you have good instincts and you can take advantage of opportunities, then make yourself a well-rounded player, and I think that's what he's done.
And certainly both him and Bryce Jackson actually combined their 6 for 6 on their stolen base attempts this year. And certainly if you were, opposing team that didn't know much about this team, you'd look, those guys might be a little bit speedy, but then you look at them and how, big and powerful they are. Certainly good runners in their own right, but not, a stealing base situation every time they're on base like someone like Jack Maruskin, who's 6 for 6 on the year.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show you it's not always your fastest guys or your best base stealers. You just have to have good instincts and know how to read things. But I think part of our offensive philosophy is about applying pressure, and I think that includes everybody, whether you're a guy that has blazing speed or you're a guy that's just average to below average speed. You're going to be expected to try to contribute on the bases in some way, and I think those guys have done that.
And so another guy that I wanted to bring up in Andrew Smith, who hit his first home run since March 14th in that win on the Game 2 of Saturday, a 2-run shot. I mean, he knew it off the bat as soon as he swung and went over the right field fence. A big home run for him and the team in that game. Really got the guys motivated, and he's been another kind of Mr. Consistent this year. You always know kind of what you're going to get out of him, whether he's DHing, he's catching, he's pitching, or he's batting, and certainly a guy that just kind of brings the team together.
Well, I think you alluded to it there. I mean, he's kind of had to do a lot of different things for us. He's worn a lot of different hats, and he had to go back behind the plate in Game 2 for the first time this season. Now, he's gotten a lot of work back there throughout the winter and spring so far in practice, but he hadn't caught in a game yet. We've needed him out of the bullpen. We've needed his bat in there as a designated hitter quite a bit, so he hasn't gotten as many opportunities to catch. But we had, Justin Jimenez come out in the first game, and then McLaughlin was able to finish the second game, but had a pretty sizable knot on his arm from getting hit on a backswing. So now all of a sudden, you're trying to find, that next guy. And Drew, we got to keep his bat in the lineup. As you mentioned, he swings it for us pretty well. So he did a good job going in there and filling in behind the plate. And, like you said, launched another home run. And it's always good when you see him starting to, get hits. He sometimes will tend to be a streaky hitter, but overall he's been pretty consistent for us this season. And we've needed that power threat from the left side to complement, Roland Jackson in the middle of the lineup.
Absolutely, and certainly a help to have those guys. And also someone towards the bottom of the lineup, but certainly a threat in Josh Netterville, who's a switch hitter and can provide that, and also his speed on the base pass. He made a great catch out in left field in Game 1, I believe, and just able to read the flight perfectly of the ball and dive down to get it. How valuable has he been? Just, again, a pretty consistent performer. He might not always have the numbers at the plate, but certainly a threat once he gets on, and then his defense as well.
Yeah, I think, when everybody's going to hit, slumps at the plate, has struggles at the plate, but when you can play defense and bring a high level of speed to the game as well, when you're not getting hits, that makes you valuable to your team. So he plays a high level of defense, and he's able to make things happen on the bases when he gets on base. So, and I think one of the things with our outfield, you won't find three guys that cover more ground than Nettie, Fife, and Moruskin out there. So we're foul line to foul line, and even more so sometimes. We got Jack made a diving catch in foul territory the other day. So just in general, I think the outfield has done a great job defensively of just covering ground, which is what our thought was going into the season. We have some guys that are athletic, that are fast, get good reads. So. But as far as Nettie goes, when he gets on, he's havoc for the other team, and it changes how they approach things. It changes how they pitch the next batter. So we can get him on base. We're a much more dangerous club.
Absolutely, and so that danger can be shown this week. You got a Wednesday road trip to West Virginia Wesleyan, a reschedule that happened earlier in the season that now has been moved. And so following that, a 4-game series back at home against Wheeling this weekend. Wheeling, who I believe is one of the top teams in this division in their play. So certainly a good matchup for you guys. Certainly wish you the best of luck for those games, and hopefully get the guys that have been banged up back healthy again. Hayden with that, and it'll wrist not on him. And then Jack also on that diving catch you mentioned, banging his leg up against the fence. Certainly a bang-bang kind of weekend series for you, but certainly wishing you the best for this week.
Yeah, long weekend, man. We're excited. We're ready to go play, and we worked hard to try to get the field ready to play that second game. We just kind of ran out of time, and weather didn't cooperate. So we'll get back at it Wednesday against Wesleyan and try to get back over 500 and keep the train moving. So thanks, Logan.
Back here on the Bobcast, and we're bringing in tennis head coach Jeff Splinter. Coach, your team with a Tuesday loss last week against Salem. Both teams losing 7-0. Well, the men losing 7-0. The women winning 5-2 by way of default wins because of Salem not having the athletes available. And then a heartbreaking loss yesterday for the men against Mount Aloysius. A 4-3 loss in which a couple of players went 3 sets and just couldn't pull out that victory for you guys. What did you make overall of your week in the, I guess, the frustration of losing, but also seeing some good tennis overall from your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Salem is one of the better teams in the region, and, it was another good test for our players. We want to continue to be tested and continue to play at a high level. So playing a school like Salem is going to allow us to continue to do that the rest of the season, especially with a tough match coming up with Fairmont. Who will be, similar towards the top of the lineup. So it's good exposure for players like, our first-year player Origin, for, Mason, for Tim, for Jeff, for Manny, and, the girls on the girls' side. So, it was good to test ourselves and kind of see where we're at. It's been it feels like it's been a while since we played before that. So with Easter break having off, it was nice to get back and play some high-level tennis. Obviously we didn't get the results that we were looking for, but again, we're getting more and more experience. We're feeling a little bit more confident in what we're playing, and that's what we can really ask for and continue to play toward. And then, on Sunday with my Aloysius, the guys came out really, really good in doubles, and in singles we talked a lot about executing and finishing, and that was something we just couldn't do yesterday. So we had Ben and Mason both win their first sets relatively easily, and then for some reason just did not come out with that same energy and intensity that second set, and that kind of carried over into the third set a little bit. So Mason played a phenomenal match and ended up coming back from being down. He actually had a match point, but ended up missing the shot. But we continue to just push forward and know that we want to continue to play our brand of tennis. And yesterday I felt like we got away from that a little bit.
And so you talked about that match against Salem from Tuesday was basically a week and a half off for you guys. The last match before that was March 27th when you were on the road at West Virginia State. Is that something that kind of affected the players, do you think, of not having match play for that long of a time? Obviously, in practice, you guys push yourselves pretty hard against one another, but you can only do so much against the teammates that you've been practicing against for all year. Is that something that you think might have gotten to your team in terms of that performance, and also just going up against, like you said, one of the top teams in the region?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's something that really affected us. Like you talked about, we love that competition in practice. We love to just whatever we're doing and we're competing, whether it's just we're out, seeing who can get into the COVID testing line first. It's a competition. It's, hey, beat me here. So I don't think that's a problem. I do think, our men's team especially really struggles to come out with some energy. And Salem was the first match that the men and the women played together on the court. So there was less people watching in terms of our own athletes. So normally they're very vocal towards each other and when they're supporting each other. So when everyone's on the court, obviously there's a lot more focus towards your own match, and you're not able to see really good shots here or there, or celebrate some good things. So I think we need to do a little bit better of a job of that, of staying focused on our match, celebrating our own good things, and then not letting the bad shots, or not letting winners on us affect our mentality a little bit.
And so one player that you brought up, in Origin Greer, who is a first-year player, and he's falling into a bit of just unfortunate circumstances where he's your number one, so he's going to go against the other team's number one in almost every single match. And he plays with so much power, and you can just tell that he's just a great tennis player, but it doesn't often show in the results, and where you think, oh, this guy might not be so good. He loses, almost in straight sets, or he can't pull out wins, but people forget that, these international players that the other schools have are very good in their own right, and they push him. But then, he comes into doubles, and he's got a great partnership with Jeff Goldring, and also he won his doubles with Jeff against Mount Aloysius, and then won his singles match as well. But, how valuable is it? You said a little bit about him getting this experience against these top-level players from other schools, and then bringing it back to your own team, and he's able to kind of communicate with, seniors like Jeff and Tim of how to improve their game as well.
Yeah, no, it's a big thing. I think Origin has learned a ton from seniors like Tim and Jeff, and just how to structure points, because there is that level of Tim and Jeff have been doing college tennis for 4 years now, and they understand how to build points and how to structure themselves. They might not be able to play at the same level that Origin can, but Origin's still growing and learning mentally just the same way everybody else is on the team. So he's really figured out how to build his points a little bit more, and figure out how to win consistently against these top players. So he had a tough matchup with Salem. That guy was on fire on Tuesday, and he just was not missing any forehands and just absolutely drilling them down the line. So I think Origin took a lot out of that match, and realized that he was playing into the other guy's hand a little bit too much. So on Sunday against Mount Aloysius, he came out a little slow in singles to start. Was down, I think, 3-2, and then ended up winning 4 out of the last 5 games that first set. And then really, what we like to see in that second set, took care of business.
And so another player that you already brought up as well, but Mason Ordube, who, you say sometimes the men's team, they have a little bit of trouble getting that energy. But when I watched him on Tuesday, and anytime I see him in practice, he just always seems to have a fire under him just at all times, and his competition level is always top-notch. You mentioned him losing that match point and not being able to come away with that winning set. But just in terms of being a competitor, he's always the one that I see kind of motivating the other team or his teammates and really getting into himself. Sometimes a little bit harder on himself, but that's just because of how much of a competitor he is.
No, absolutely. Mr. Hustle, Mason Ordube. So, he is the battery of the team. The team goes as he goes. They hear his yelling over the course of the courts, and gives everybody an extra boost playing. They hear that and they yell back. That because they know he's playing well and he's looking great. We are seeing tons of that on Tuesday and on Sunday. He doesn't let him losing points affect the next point. So he's done a great job. Even in that match Sunday against Mount Aloysius, fought back after that, and then fought into a tiebreaker that third set, played phenomenal in the tiebreaker, just came up 2 points short.
And so one last player again that you've brought up, in Ben Williams, who hasn't gotten a lot of attention this year from us and playing in that 6th spot for you guys, and he's kind of switched on and off with Ethan Von Hagel also being in there, Ryan Tomasic being in there as well. But he comes out, he wins his first set and then just couldn't get it in the next 2 sets. But again, like you said, where these players, they come out well and then just a bit of a drop-off in the second set, and that affects them in this third set that contributes to the loss. But what did you see from him on Sunday, where, again, hasn't really gotten a lot of attention, but certainly came out with a pretty good performance, even though it was a loss?
Yeah, Ben didn't get too much of a warm-up because he was sitting down during doubles. So to see him come out in that first set and really, take it to the guy he was playing was very encouraging. And we saw a lot of great things that first set. And then the second set, he started, I don't know if he was getting tired or if, he was starting to question some of his shots. Maybe the other guy was getting a little bit more tough to play, kind of missing less. But that's when we got to start playing our best, is when, the other team starts playing their best. And, we talk a lot on this team of playing our best in the second set, not letting the first set affect us, whether we win or we lose. So, in those winnable matches, we got to go out there. We got to find a way to win no matter what it takes. And, for Ben, to lose that second set, and then, I thought he did a much better job coming out with a little bit more energy in that third set, but, he kind of let that guy take control of the match and, wasn't able to find it again.
Certainly is a sport where a lot of it has to do with momentum, and you can win one set, but if you don't come out the same in that next set, you might lose in terms of that. So pretty big week coming up for you guys. You're home on Wednesday against Fairmont State, which you mentioned, a pretty good team with some top players at the start of their roster. And then Sunday you travel out to Millersville in Pennsylvania, another pretty good team out there in the PSAC, and one that you're familiar with from last season. Mm-hmm. So we certainly wish you the best of luck in both of those games. And I wish I could be there Wednesday, but unfortunately we have a lot of events that day for us. But I certainly will be cheering you on from wherever I am, and I certainly look forward to seeing you guys here in the future, and wish you the best of luck.
All right, thank you.
So here with acrobatics and tumbling on the Bobcast, and with head coach Katie Nunley, as they wrapped up their first season in competitive Division II here at Frostburg State. Coach, I just want to get some of your thoughts on your season overall. the first Frostburg team to actually make the MEC tournament since joining the conference in Division II, and it's only your first year of competition. What did you make of your team's growth throughout the year?
They definitely got to step out of their comfort zones. We asked them a lot, and to try different positions and to just, we were kind of in a bind on occasion. So the fact that they were able to really step up at the end of the day, it benefited the program, and we ended up weaseling our way into the MEC, and it was awesome.
And so, you had your last regular season meet of the season on Tuesday at West Virginia Wesleyan, and that was a pretty big meet for you guys. You pretty much had to win it to make the MEC tournament, and you guys just pulled it out with a 1.6-point victory against another established team in the conference. How big was it for you guys to get that win in that moment and come away with that victory to make the tournament?
The girls knew how big that meet was, so I think they did put some pressure on themselves, and they ended up at the end of the day just, pulling through. They had some mistakes, and it was okay because the nerves were definitely there. But when we competed team event, they knew this is make or break for any meet. So they really focused. They really made it clean. They worked on timing, and we pretty much had to be almost perfect to guarantee that we were moving on to the MEC.
And a couple of the events and the heats were almost perfect. In the acro and the 5 element, you got a 9.7 out of your 9.85 start value. In the pyramid and the synchronized, it was a 9 out of a 9.2. The open was a 9.5 out of 9.7. And Matt and I have talked about this in our own time of how big it is for those start values for you guys. Because opening the season, you were in kind of the mid to high 8s, and you weren't able to get higher scores just because of the start values of where you want your team to be. And now, as the season goes along, you get these higher values. So, how has it been to progress that far, and then, you set these high values and your players just come out and they meet your expectations almost?
Yeah, so I definitely say from me as a coaching perspective, our first few meets, I wanted to play it safe just to ensure the girls were safe out on the mat, and, I don't want to set them up for failure ever. So I want to make sure that they're comfortable going out on the mat knowing that it's going to hit. But as we progressed and the competitive side started to really come along, I knew that we had to up some stuff here and there. I wanted to really play up to Wesleyan. I've seen what they've done. I've watched their meets, and that's where we were able to upgrade a few things here and there, but I didn't want to overwhelm them with upgrading everything. So we did a few that I knew were solid that we definitely could hit. And then progressing to the MEC, our first, our semifinals against Fairmont, we kind of pulled out all of our cards. So we were like, all right, this is it. We got to put it all out there. And they did great with it. I was beyond proud. I couldn't have asked for them to do it any better, to be quite honest, especially since the timeline that we were given to work new skills and then get them perfect for meet day.
And so you talked a little bit about that semifinal against Fairmont. I want to kind of go back to the week before, actually, when you had the tri-meet with Fairmont and D&E. So in this tumbling event against Wesleyan, and tumbling has been one of your best events that you've done all year. You won it by over 4 points against Wesleyan. And one big one that I wanted to say was that you jumped up one of the heats from a 7 start value in that tri-meet all the way up to a 9.1. Against Wesleyan. What was it that you saw in that heat that allowed you to have the confidence to put it up almost 2 full points in that next meet?
Yeah, so actually our 2 girls that were in our original duo tumbling pass, they were like, Coach, we kind of thought about some different options that we could put for tumbling, and this is kind of what we thought that would be more beneficial for the team. So we mostly just moved people around. Instead of our trio being a 1.5, we moved that to duo, and then our trio we turned into a little bit higher of a start value, and then kept our quad the same in an 8.5, and then solos we bumped up a little bit here and there as well. But was all their idea, to be quite honest with you. I was pretty comfortable keeping it the same because I knew tumbling is our strong suit, and we've been scoring really well on it. But they were like, let's give this a shot. Let's just try it. And at the end of the day, it paid off.
And so rounding off that meet, and it really, that tumbling event really got you guys into a good position. And then going into the team event, again, and we've talked about it these last couple weeks, where starting the season you didn't have the team event with your roster. You weren't very comfortable with setting something up. And then the past couple weeks, you went to your team and said, hey, can we try this? And they're like, absolutely. And they went out and got it. And so your team event, once again, just having it allowed you to get to the victory. How big is it to have such a big score value and be able to finally do it? And in your first year, you've had a few good successful ones now.
Yeah, the start value of team event is all depending on where you are as a team. So the fact that our start value was in that high 90s, it was awesome. Like, it was a great feeling for them. And them getting to perform it and do it and just kind of get that under their belt, even if it's not our highest start value, because I know next year we will have a much higher start value just because we didn't put all of our elite tumbling in there. But the fact that they just got to get the feel of it and got to do a whole meet and then do that, because that first part of the meet before you do team event, you're whooped. And then going into the team event, it's like, okay, you got to give it all you got because this is make or break. Every meet that we have been watching lately comes down to team event. So that plays a big role, and it was unfortunate that we couldn't do it the first few meets because I definitely think we would have won against Glenville, but I think we added it at the right time, and I think we started to peak at the right time as well.
And so you go in and making the MEC tournament. That was on Friday, and you competed against the number 1 seed Fairmont State again after last week in the tri-meet. And once again, Fairmont, a top 10 team in the country. They've been successful for a number of years now. Obviously learned a lot of lessons, and I listened to your portion with Matt last week of how you competed in that one, and just a very talented team. And we talked a little bit about he was learning from the broadcast perspective at Fairmont, what they do successfully with their SID Chris, and it's setting everything up there and having it run so successfully. Is that sort of the same for you guys, where you can kind of look at them and be like, you know what, we can take lessons away from this team and how they do things in their preparation, how they compete, what they're like on the sideline? Is that something that you guys bring away too?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely talk to the girls after we get into the locker room or back on the bus, and I'm like, guys, did you experience how Fairmont's atmosphere was? Did you see how supportive Wesleyan was towards each other? I tell them those little things, and as we continue to grow, that will definitely come along, because first year team, you got a bunch of freshmen that are like, I don't know, do I clap here? Do I yell here? What do I do? So they are learning, and they've picked it up quickly. And just from our first meet to even our third meet, they drastically changed. There was constant cheering on the side. I do say that we need to continuously be warming up on the side, and that's something that will change within how we run practice next year. But I think they took a lot away. They've seen how clean and how precise other teams have been, and they know that we can get there had we had more preparation. So they are excited and ready to get back into it, and I am just excited for them to get back to the same spot that we were at, and I hope we're doing even better than what we were this year.
And so you go into now Saturday, where they have what they call the event finals, where the top scores from the conference in each event are picked, and the events and heats, I should say, are picked, and then you compete, and it's 3 teams, and in one event there was 4 teams that were competing. So it's just one go kind of, and if, for listeners out there, you can kind of think of swim meets, where in the conference championships you have the team obviously have their overall score, but then each individual race has its own score to itself. It's a little bit similar, I would say, to that. And you were selected to 9 of the event finals, and you actually won 5 of them.
Yes.
Which it's very impressive. Was second in the conference, I believe, in the event finals. I believe Fairmont won that one as well. But for your wins, and it started in the synchronized and the open toss, you won both of those, which we haven't certainly not me. I don't know what you talked with Matt entirely, but the toss hasn't necessarily said, I don't want to say it's not a strong suit, but it's not one of your best events. Like the tumbling is kind of what you guys have been known for, but you win 2 of those, and that's pretty impressive considering there's only 3 of the heats.
Yeah. We started to get better at tosses as the meets went on. Whenever we had our tri-meet against Fairmont, and Deanie, the head coach from Fairmont, she was like, how do you guys get your tosses like that? And I'm like, to be honest with you, I'm not sure. I just tell them to throw really hard. I tell my girls to set, and they do a really good job at executing that. So that was something that they just got more comfortable with, and they just progressed a lot better. So next year they're going to be even better than what they've been. Our open heat, I wish we would have got to compete our double Arabian that we started working, because Abby has excelled at that, and her group has done amazing with getting her to stay calm and focused on that. So competing the single, it was really good. It's always beautiful, but her double has just gotten even better. So I'm excited for her next year as well.
And so we've talked about a lot, but again, in your tumbling, and you win 3 of the tumbling events, the synchronization, and what I saw in the one meet that I was able to see this year, and that the synchronization of the tumbling is really, really important for having every athlete being on the same wavelength, and then also being able to individually all do, amazing feats with their bodies. So in the trio, it was Abby Baker, who you just mentioned, Maya Moran, and Alexis Palmieri to win that one. What's been their success, and what allowed them to win that event?
They tumble really, really well together. They are able to either slow down or speed up their tumbling based on just listening to like the hand patters or the feet patters that they are tumbling with. But they all have really controlled 1.5s. Abby sometimes gets a little bit too much power. Maya's been really consistent, and so is Alexis. But they just tumble really well together, to be quite honest with you. We just kind of were like, all right, let's try you 3 together. And we were like, okay, that's not like bad. Like we just need to work a few more times and it'll be perfect. So they do a really good job at just staying like patient, so to say, because we have some that are just like, let's just do the skill. And I'm like, you got to slow down. So.
And so then we go into the quad heat, and so if the trio was a little bit difficult with synchronization, you add 1 more athlete onto that, and now you have 4 that have to be in sync with each other, so that Virginia Krasney, Cindy Green, Neva Marie Rose, and Caitlin Bolton in that one. And, some of these athletes, I going back, obviously, I'm not entirely as well-versed as Matt is in this with your athletes, but I certainly recognize Neva and Caitlin from this, but Virginia and Sydney certainly coming into their own throughout the season as well. What made those 4 successful in that heat?
I would say just wanting to like contribute to the team. They do a really good job at being positive, and Sydney got her solo pass this last meet, and it was beautiful. Neva's had a solo pass as well, and Kate is our 6 element or aerial pass depending on the day. But they just work really hard, and I know Virginia, she came off of an injury over the summer before coming in this year, so she really wanted to get her full back, and at the beginning of this semester she got it back, so she wanted to be in a heat, and I saw that it was best for all of them to be together. Sydney and Neva have the same height, so to say, and then Kate and Virginia usually have the same height, so they tumble really well together, and then just spacing them in certain ways so they are in sync and they hear those the feet hitting, the hands hitting. It worked. So they competed it Saturday, and it was beautiful. I had no doubt in my mind that we weren't going to win that one because it was just beautiful timing and it looked great. So.
And then, so your last win of the event finals, and Abby Baker, who you've raved all year about how successful she's been. She won the 6 element tumbling, and also you were very happy when I let you know she was first team All MEC announced earlier last week. Just a great season for her overall as a top for this team, and ending her season on a high note and winning her event. How happy were you for her for that event final, and also the first team recognition for her?
I was ecstatic. She has really blossomed, and she's really come a long way. That pass that she did compete, It was a little bit hit or miss at practice, but she really honed in her power because sometimes she gets too much power on it. But she did a great job and she really wanted it. So I was just excited that she was able to perform and then win it. But just watching her grow over this little time that we had, anything that I've asked of her, she's done it and she's done it well. And she is just an overall like well-rounded athlete for acro, and she has so much potential, and I'm excited to see her grow in these next 3 years.
Absolutely, and so many young players on this team. And then just wrapping up here and looking back at the season, and Alexis Palmieri, who obviously we've talked about and great at tumbling in her own right as well.
Yes.
And then Lakin Spar, who's a base for you guys. Both of those second team All MEC, also All Conference getters. And we've talked about Alexis and then also Lakin. Just not from the acro perspective, but just as a teammate, she's been like a motivator. She's always positive and high energy all the time. And I remember when we did the first meet here against Gannon, and you guys were wrapping up the mats, and she came over, what did you guys think? Did you guys like that? And I was like, it's pretty cool that they're recognizing us, from behind the scenes in a way.
Yeah.
Of doing that, and then just seeing her energy. She always has a smile on her face. But how happy were you for both Alexis and Lakin both to get that recognition as well?
I was ecstatic for them as well because, I don't get to pick them, obviously, because they're on my team, but the fact that other teams had recognized them, it was really, really great. It goes to show, like, the staple that they're putting this program putting on this program and the standard that they're setting for it. So I have no doubt that they will make first team next year, and more of our girls will ultimately be on there as well because they put in the hard work and they put in the reps and they do a really good job.
Absolutely. And then the season just ended, but you got a whole off season to work things out and iron out any of the kinks. But certainly want to congratulate you on this season, making the MEC tournament, seeing you be able to compete finally in your first year here in competition, and certainly a sport that continues to grow throughout the entire NCAA, the NCATA, and really wish you the best of luck next season. Well, I'll still be around to come and see you guys and hopefully PA and not screw anything up. I hope so.
You'll do great.
Yeah, really just congratulations on the season. Thank you for coming in and talk to me today, and we certainly wish you the best of luck in the off season and for next year.
Thank you so much.
Back on the Bobcast with men's soccer and head coach Keith Byrnes. Coach, a pretty heartbreaking loss for you guys on the road against West Virginia Wesleyan. A goal scored with 8 seconds left in the game for a 1-0 loss against a team that's kind of like you guys, that middle of the conference. But what did you make of your team's performance on the road Sunday?
We were proud of the way they competed. We've been getting on them about just walking off the field feeling like you kind of gave it everything. Unfortunately, it was a little bit heartbreaking, but they could at least walk off the field, look at each other in the eye and be like, we put it all out there today, and it's just, you got to take your hat off sometime when someone makes a shot like that. A volley off a cleared ball that just found its way into the corner of the net.
Yeah, and so you guys started off the game pretty well. You got the first couple of chances in that first 15 minutes. Tamino kind of blasting a shot over the bar, and then Randy forcing their goalkeeper into a really nice save. Almost took the lead yourselves, but what was it for you guys that you were able to come out and start the game out hot like that and create your own couple of chances to start out?
Well, again, I think it was the urgency of just actually competing and also the mindset of basically a playoff game, because if we won, we felt like we would have controlled our destiny, and we just needed to put a good performance in to make up for the last couple of weeks. So I think they were ready, and they knew it was kind of an all-hands-on-deck. Again, we started with 14 field players, and we had a couple of guys dealing with some issues from getting the vaccine. But they, I was very pleased with the effort, disappointed in the outcome, but pleased with the effort.
And so after that hot start for you guys, Wesleyan kind of got back into the game. They outshot you 8-0 into the second half, and part of that, at the start of the second half, Joel Asal made a really nice save off an open header from about 7 yards out to keep you guys in it and keep it at 0-0. But what was it from Wesleyan that they kind of grew into the game to put some pressure on you guys?
I don't think any of those shots were really on goal except for one. I think Joel only had one save, so they didn't really threaten. But they were taking long range shots. They took what we gave them, but they did start to push us back a little bit more. But I didn't really feel like it was too dangerous. I felt like it was more of a midfield battle for both teams. Neither team really. I mean, we only had the 2 shots for ourselves. So back and forth, teams grinding it out, and just waiting to capitalize on a mistake, or like I said, you hit that one shot that wins you a game, and there's not much you can do about it.
And so one thing that I noticed, and I tried to watch as much of the game as I could, is that Wesleyan looks like they were playing with a back 3 in their formation, which I believe is about the first time that you've seen that, at least from your home games in this season. Was that anything that kind of not take you by surprise, but something to kind of figure out in a different formation from the team?
No, actually, we prepared for a back 3, and we thought it was more of a back 4. They just pushed their outside backs up. The one back attacks a lot, which kind of leaves 3 in the back, but it was more 2 center backs and a wide back that stayed home, as opposed to 3 central center backs, which is what we saw on film and what they played last year. So we were prepared for it, but I thought we actually defended it pretty well. We forced them into a lot of mistakes with their long balls and playing out of the back. We just, unfortunately, weren't good enough to capitalize on the counterattacks, just losing the possession going into the attacking third. And AB played a very similar style where they used their wing backs to get up. So we've seen it quite a bit. It's been a little bit more of a trend, some of these teams in the conference. So luckily it wasn't the first time kind of seeing that going on.
Is it something that you've noticed where teams throughout the year have kind of looked at you guys and, you like to use the speed of your forwards to get in behind, play the through balls, but also trying to play in possession through the midfield where teams are looking that if they can just hold their defense back, that they can kind of limit you guys, and then it's a battle there between the midfield? Or is it, you still think that counterattack is your best chance to get in behind and score?
It's tough to say. I feel like we still play through the middle, even though we're not possessing the way we'd like to, and I think that's where the offense breaks down a little bit. We're not keeping possession going forward. So our best opportunities do come from those balls in behind where we can use our pace. And we're trying to be a little bit more direct, but it's hard to break some habits. We want to play, the game the right way, when unfortunately we're just not executing it the right way sometimes. So the offense is sluggish, and the breaks come from when we can get in behind a higher line in their space to use the speed we have. But ideally it's not the way we try to play, but sometimes it's what we have to take advantage of.
And so, going into the last bit of the game, and you have Tamino's shot got deflected away for a corner with just over a minute left. And then immediately off of that, Wesleyan kind of countered the other way. You guys got back in position pretty quickly to prevent that opportunity. But then, just like you said earlier, a long ball forward, headed away, and then their guy just hit a sweet volley that went past Joel, and that was the winner with 8 seconds. What was the message to the team after, I can imagine feeling pretty down after that, feel like you should have at least went to overtime, maybe come away with the win, at the very least a draw, but having to leave with a loss after playing so hard for 89 minutes and 52 seconds?
Well, I mean, we there's no moral victories in playing hard and losing. We still lost. So we just talked about the positives to take from it for the next game and to end the season on a positive note. And the last couple of losses, there wasn't much to take from. So at least this game we had something to build on, which was the work rate and playing with some heart and competing, and actually looking organized and playing like a team. So there were definitely positives there, but a loss is a loss. So we got to be better next game.
Absolutely. And so that game Friday at home against a pretty talented West Liberty team in what may be your last game of the season here. And a lot of the teams that I've noticed throughout the season in this conference, that they have a lot of international players that will come in and compete. Do you see a difference now, your second year here in the conference, between where your team is a lot of homegrown athletes from mostly Maryland compared with these international players? Not that there's a difference in quality, but just in terms of how they play together and in terms of how they're set up and play the game out.
No, I mean, it's all by team because these kids haven't played together. I mean, they come from different countries, so their style of plays have to be meshed into whatever their team and their coach is, is preaching to them. So I think each team has a different style based on just philosophy. But they come in as older. Most of them are playing in professional leagues, before they come here, whether it's, third, fourth division type stuff. So it's a different element than a high school freshman you're up against. So there's you just got to be ready for it. But we saw it last year, and we'll probably see it for the rest of our life here in the MEC. So it is what it is. We just got to be better.
And certainly players that haven't really, for you guys, played a lot together this season. You have injuries. You have some players that came in late or maybe have to have left the team for a bit, and hard to find that consistency. That certainly next year, hoping to get more togetherness and have a formation and a group of players that are able to play the entire time, the entire season together, which is something that, teams may look at our record and think, well, they've not been very good, but they forget that, the amount of factors that you guys have had to put through this season really affects that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the bottom line is we just want to grow from this season, whether, we're not going to get into the playoffs, so did we get kids playing experience? Did we learn from mistakes that we made? Did we see where we can be better? And did a lot of guys get minutes that, maybe wouldn't have in a normal season if we had, a 30-man roster? So there's things the next year when things are more back to normal and we've got our full team, we feel like there's definitely things we can learn from this season that will be a benefit. And that's the way we got to look at it. We got a chance to play, and we got a chance to compete all year or all semester. And that was exciting. So, doing that in the fall again with a chance to make up for where we fell short this season is something to look forward to.
Absolutely. And so I want to thank you for coming on today to talk to me on the Bobcast, and wish you the best of luck on Friday in your last game for this season here at home, and looking forward to see the guys play one more time.
All right, thanks for having me.
Back on the Bobcast this week, and we're bringing in women's lacrosse head coach Taylor Sindall. Coach, a pretty good week for you guys, a 14-7 win against Davis and Elkins last Thursday or Wednesday, excuse me, I'm mixing up my day, yeah. And then a 21-9 victory over Notre Dame in sort of a revenge game for you guys after they beat you here at home earlier this season. The basically other top two teams in the conference up with you guys that you just beat by a combined 19 goals. So certainly you have to be happy with the week that your players have just put out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think we didn't play our best against D&E, but we were able to come out with the win. And then Notre Dame, like you said, it was a revenge game, and, everyone was fired up for that game. So really pumped to come home with a win.
And so we'll start with the Davis and Elkins game, and that 14-7 victory is a little bit skewed. It's obviously, it looks like a nice win, but Marissa Cuevas in net for the Senators, 24 saves against you guys. You guys had 44 shots in total, and she was just all over the place. I mean, there were some where when I was on the broadcast, I'm like, oh, they're going to score, and then she just flicks her stick out from nowhere and makes the save. All the more impressive considering, I mean, she's only 4'11", listed on their roster, but what was it like to face against a goalkeeper that is that impressive and just kind of shut you guys down in a way?
We knew she was going to be very, very good, especially from watching film of her against other programs. I think also the fact that she's a lefty gives her an advantage because no one's used to shooting against lefty goalies. But we had really practiced on shooting to her off-stick side, but she is phenomenal. I mean, she's a freshman, and to come in and, play that way is fantastic. I mean, there were a couple saves that I think could have been goals for us that we kind of gave her, but she really did play great, and she is what has kept them in that game, and I think is helping them be so successful this year in the conference. I mean, she is just on another level, and hats off to her.
Absolutely, and certainly a player to watch for future reference. Also in that game, something that I was impressed with your defense in that you guys had 5 yellow cards and a green card in that game, but impressively no man-up goals allowed through any of them. So how was it, from a coaching perspective, where you go down, a man for 2 minutes, but then you don't allow any of the goals. And I remember, D&E would have possession of it, and they would either turn it over or Whitney would come up with a big save, or you force a turnover, and then you can go back on attack and really kill off a lot of the clock. But how impressed were you with your defense and your midfield to be able to kill off those man-up opportunities?
Obviously, we don't like getting cards. That's something that we have really put a focus on this season, is playing cleaner. And, I think, don't want to blame the officials, but, you got to give it to them a little bit. But I think our man-down defense is stellar because our kids know what is on the line. And not that they don't know that when we're even, but they know how important this is to hold their ground and get a stop, and not only get a stop but get a turnover and give us an opportunity to either run out the penalty or score on our own. So, I think our man-down defense is super strong, and really, really happy with the way that they stepped up in, unfortunately, all of those instances.
And so rounding off that game with Lindsay Coleman, who I want to bring up, and she was on, taking most of the draw controls for you guys, and you guys were able to win a majority of them. But then once she got into the offensive end, Lindsay, obviously a senior this year, she just seems to have a chemistry with every player on this roster. And, these players have gone through, you're their third coach in 3 years. And how impressive it is to have a senior like this who can come in, and you have juniors from one recruiting class, sophomores from another, and first years from your recruiting class. But how big is it for her to have that chemistry with all of them and be able to continue to flow the offense?
Lindsay's a great player because she has such great vision, and she's one of those players that, she is smart. She has a good IQ. If the drive isn't there, she knows immediately she's picking her head up to feed. But I think, she finally has players around her that she can feed to. So I think she's very unselfish, but in the best way. She takes it when she needs to, and she feeds it when she needs to. And she has been great kind of bringing some of those other kids along, hey, your teammates can catch the ball. Let's feed it to them. And now I'm just really impressed with how many assists we've been able to have this season, and she's been a huge part of that.
Absolutely. And so we get into the game against Notre Dame, and you were saying that, that 7-7 at halftime that you guys had and was a little bit similar. You guys weren't down, but the first game where you had the slow start for you guys, it wasn't the case in this game, but similar at the end of the first half where Notre Dame scores a late goal. And the start of the second half, in the first game, you guys kind of just shut down and let them control it. In this game, quite the opposite. They score a goal with 10 seconds left to even it back up, and then you come out, first 5 minutes of the second half, you score 7 unanswered goals.
Yeah, I think, the vibe was just different going into that game. At no point when it was close was I worried. I knew we were going to win the game, just because we're a different team than we were the last time we played them. But I was like, come on, guys, we're better than this. We just weren't clearing the ball well. We would make a great stop or win the draw control, and then we would struggle to get it over into our offensive end because of stick protection or not good decisions. So we brought it in, we talked to them about it, and, the game was getting a little chippy back and forth, and, some words were exchanged between players, and I think that really rallied our girls together. No one treats us this way. No one talks to us like this. And we are a team, and we are going to prove to them that, they can't hang with us. And they came out and scored those 7 unanswered goals. And I looked at the clock, and I was like, there's still so much time left. But obviously it continued to go in our favor. But it was just great to see, they scored that first goal of the second half, and, they believed that we were going to crush them. And that is what I feel like we did, and we are all very happy about it.
Yeah, 13-2 scoreline in that second half. And Notre Dame, I don't believe, scored for the last 10 minutes of that half. It was all you guys. 3 players that really stood out to me when I was looking at the stats, and Lily Stevens, Summer Cavey, and Anna Kearney all had at least 5 goals in the game, and that, I believe, is the first time that you guys have done that this year. Obviously, we've talked about the balance in your offense and your attack this year. But for that game, having all 3 of those players being clicked on, and then I was surprised. I looked at the stats. Stephanie King, who's been basically your leading scorer this year, didn't have a single point in that game, and you guys won by 12 against the second-best team in the conference.
Yeah, so, Steph still had a great game. I mean, if you look at the stats, you're like, where was she? But she was the one creating all those opportunities, clearing the space, setting the picks for those players to score those goals and get those assists. So don't want to downplay her at all. But I think, Lily Stevens has really been continuing to step up and grow. And I think this was really her breakout game of like, okay, I can be an impact player. Summer is always an impact player for us. She does it all. And then Anna, like I said, people were just feeding the ball and she was just putting it in the back of the net. So really impressed with them. They all really stepped up, and we do offensive and defensive player of the game. And it was really hard to pick just one. We ended up picking two on each side. So just really impressed with our vision, our patience, our shot selection. Everything was going well for us on Saturday.
And certainly, speaking about Summer, you could potentially nominate her for offensive and defensive player if you wanted. 5 goals, 3 assists, 3 ground balls, 2 caused turnovers, and 7 draw controls for her. Wanted to go back a little bit on Lily Stevens, who you guys had the Charleston game last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, at this point. And we saw her when we were leaving the press box out of the game, and we're like, hey, how are you doing? How was your game? And we're like, congratulations on the win. She looked at us like, we played well, but I don't think I did all that well. She had 1 goal in the game, wasn't happy with her performance, and then put up 4 against D&E and then scored 6 against Notre Dame. So I called it a little bit of a bounce back for her personally, but just something that, motivating her as a sophomore and certainly continue to grow over the next 2 years.
She's just one of those kids that never settles. Even if she has a great game and we tell her she had a great game, she's like, yeah, but I dropped the ball that one time, or I got stuffed that one time. Like, she is one of those kids that is never going to settle for less than perfection, and she does individuals every week. She puts the time in, and it is coming to fruition for her. So it's really exciting to see, like, she is motivated, she is hungry, and she is never going to stop, no matter how many goals she scores. She scored 6. She's like, I could have had 7. So that's really exciting to see, especially from such a young player, that she's that hungry as a sophomore. I just can't imagine the numbers she's going to put up as a senior.
Absolutely, and that motivational factor certainly something that you really can't coach a ton out of your athletes. One final player that I wanted to bring up is Ayanna McDonald, who had 4 draw controls in this game and doesn't get a ton of attention. She's one of your bench defenders who will come on and certainly do her job, but she's always reliable when she gets onto the field. And I notice her when she comes in to replace either Summer or Lindsay on the draw control, and she comes up big for you guys both there and then coming in defensively. If you pick up an injury, someone isn't playing necessarily up to the standards, she can come in and do the job. But how important is it for a role player such as that to be able to come in at any time for you as a coach, just to know what you're going to get out of her?
Ayanna is just one of those players. I actually said to her after she won one draw, like super clean herself, and she came off the field, and I looked at her, I said, have I ever told you I love you? Because I love you right now. But she's just one of those kids where she's very self-aware of what her skill sets are. And so she knows, I'm good at this and I'm not good at that. But when I have the opportunity to do my thing, I'm going to be the very best at it. So she is, she has proved herself as our draw taker. And she communicates very well. If she knows she's not going to win it, she can tell who needs to go take it. Her IQ is just amazing. And then also, if there's a player for another team that we know is going to be a really big offensive threat, we put Ayanna on her and we say, don't let her touch the ball. And she does her job. And she is just one of those kids that is a joy to coach because she, again, knows her role and she knows what she's good at. And when you give her an assignment within her role, she is going to execute 100%.
Absolutely. And so really, as I'm wrapping up here and I'm looking at my sheet, and I completely missed out Whitney Crosby, who had a fantastic couple of games where, a great game against D&E, and it was a little bit overshadowed by the play of Cuevas in goal, but certainly, keeping you guys ahead that entire game, coming up with big saves when it was close back and forth early in the game. And then against Notre Dame, like you said yourself, arguably her best game of the season, making 15 saves in that one. Has she kind of solidified that goalkeeper position? And obviously she's going to be pushed by McKenna Shea all year, but has she really just kind of come into her own in these last couple of games?
I think she definitely has come into her own, but I wouldn't say she's solidified her spot because McKenna is right there. But I think that is what makes both of them get better every week is they're both pushing each other. There's things that they both do really well, but they're so different from one another. Whitney definitely needs to work on her patience in the clear, which is something that we obviously struggled with in the first half of the Notre Dame game, but we talked to her about it and she made the change. But, we tell our defense if you're going to get beat, they're going to get shots off. But if you can force a bad shot, we know our goalies are going to make the save. And that is what I said over and over in the second half against Notre Dame. We would get beat to the outside, and I said, that's fine, Whitney's going to make this save. And time again, she stood on her head and she made that save. So it's really nice to see it all kind of coming together. Like, you say things as a coach, and then they happen and they work, and you're like, wow, I really do know what I'm talking about. But
gives you a bit of confidence, too.
Yeah,
as well
definitely.
As
and it's funny when the girls are like, wow, coach, that worked. And I'm like, weird. It's like I said that or something. But no, I mean, she is definitely coming into her own, but I don't think she can feel comfortable at all. And she knows that.
Absolutely. And a blessing for you to have two first-year goalkeepers that are as talented
Absolutely.
as both McKenna and Whitney are. And so this week you continue the road trip. Your Wednesday down in Philippi, West Virginia against AB, and then Saturday against Charleston. Two teams who you beat pretty handily earlier this season, but certainly in a conference where you can't take any game for granted. Certainly wishing you the best of luck in both of those and come back to Frostburg with a couple of wins under your belt.
That's the plan. Thank you so much.
Back here on the Bobcast, bringing in track and field head coach Shane Brookshire. Coach, a weekend at West Virginia Wesleyan for you on Saturday, but before that, you had Morgan Matthews going out to Mount St. Mary's to compete against some Division I teams in the heptathlon. I want to start with Morgan, who earned a sixth-place finish, and that's pretty impressive considering that she is going against those Division I teams. When you look at it from the outside, maybe not as impressive, but then you look at who she's going against, and certainly one that you can be proud of as a coach.
Oh, definitely. This was technically our second multi of the outdoor season. I mean, the first one, unfortunately, we didn't get any points from that. But we got her into this second one against or at Mount St. Mary's, and just looking to qualify for conference. Like, we got to have some marks for that just to get her in. And I mean, she's been nursing an injury right now, and we had a game plan just to focus on getting points, and she did extremely well. Had a couple PRs throughout her 7 events, including the javelin and including the 800. So ran against a strong headwind in the 100 hurdles, to start off the competition on day one, and it was just fantastic to see her perform well, and even when she wasn't at 100%, and then with the amount of points that she got, I mean, that ranks her 5th in the conference right now, and we know that there's definitely a lot more points that she can get, come conference time.
Certainly one. Is that something that you've seen throughout her year, that she's continued to get better? Obviously, you said she set a couple of PRs over those couple of days. Is that something that she's really worked this year to get better at and continue to improve, even though she hasn't had the opportunities, like you said, to compete and get the points and just get meet competition in?
Yeah, just watching her throughout the year, allowing, the biggest fortunate thing that has come out of this whole mess with COVID has been that when she decided to focus solely on track, because she does do field hockey normally in the fall, so she had to choose one or the other, and she chose track, and so that allowed her to focus primarily on track even throughout the fall and work on events earlier that she normally wouldn't get to work on had she been doing field hockey at that time. And so there was kind of a blessing in disguise with the chaos that has been created, and allowing her to get a little bit more emphasis on certain event areas. And then, like I said, came into this meet, she had a good positive attitude, and she was just looking forward to compete, and like I said, paid off with several PRs, and I said we know that she can do even better come conference.
And then so you go into Saturday at that meet at West Virginia Wesleyan, pick up 3 victories on that day and a number of top 5 finishes. Going to start off with Nick Richardson, who won the 400 and then got third in the 200 on that day. And certainly something from my experience in high school track of knowing that the 400 is about the worst event that you can choose to run because you're sprinting around the entirety of the track. There's no breaks in it, but certainly impressive for him, and then coming back in the 200 and getting third in that one as well.
Yeah, he ran phenomenal. That was a huge PR for him in that 400 meter, and breaking a PR that he had set in high school. And last year for indoor, he only got one opportunity to run the open 4, and then we focused him on the 60, which he broke the school record in that. With this 400 of the 48.56, it's only 0.23 away from our school record. So that could definitely fall over the course of these next few weeks. And he's now ranked number 1 in the conference in the 100 and ranked number 1 in the conference in the 400. And that was huge. And then Nathaniel Messi coming up right behind him with a big PR, 49.82. That was almost a full second off from what he ran earlier this year at Glenville with a 50.67. So our 400 contingent is looking really strong, and that's going to make it even more exciting for our 4x4 come conference time.
Absolutely, and one that kind of just feeds into the other, and really the one thing to focus on where you know your runners are going to be good in their times, and that 4x4 is just kind of getting that handoff down and being able to show what you guys have. And then following up, I want to bring up another victory in Omokemi Balagoon, who won the triple jump, the first victory in that event for you guys this year on the women's side. May not have been entirely happy with her performance in the long jump, finishing I believe 9th she was, and then coming back to win the triple. How big was that for her on Saturday?
I mean, that's a huge confidence boost for her because this was her first meet of the season. We've held her out, she's had some health issues, and so coming out and jumping 10.63 right off the bat. Triple jump's more of her event compared to long jump. And so we're just kind of trying her out there and seeing if we can potentially get anything at the conference meet. But when it comes to the triple, I mean, that's her number 1 event. And to have her come out there, jump 10.63 from a 6-step, so she wasn't even doing like a full approach. And that's phenomenal. That places her second in the conference right now, right behind teammate Alyssa Mullery. So.
Awesome for both of those. So you just spoke about Alyssa, and we'll get into her meet where she was second in the high jump and also 4th in the hurdles on that day, and also obviously a triple jumper where in her own right, but moving people around in different meets, seeing what they can do best in and where your best point total is going to come from. But all year we've talked about Alyssa and how impressive just from an athletic perspective that she is, and being able to not only compete in multiple events, but continue to get top 5, top 3 finishes in these events.
Yeah, Alyssa has been a standout for us since last year, and local athlete out of Fort Hill High School comes in and just doing extremely well. And in the high jump, I mean, she just barely missed her PR by 0.01, 1 centimeter, and so it's just the way that they start the height and how they increase the increments. But she jumped 1.55, which is her season best for her, and so it's great to see her getting back up to the heights that she normally jumps with that. And then with the hurdles, that 15:35, 34, that would have been the number 1 time in the conference after this weekend had 3 other women not ran faster than her in that. And so I believe she's only 0.08 of a second behind the number 1 female in the conference. So like I said, she's doing fantastic in the high jump. She's one of the top athletes in the hurdles, and she's number 1 in the triple jump right now. And she's only, technically redshirt freshman, but second year. And I said we're just looking forward to great things from her at this conference meet. Last year at indoors, she scored more points by herself than the team did the previous year. And I mean, we got a very strong women's team this year, so that probably won't happen again. But, I mean, she's definitely becoming quite the point scorer for us.
Absolutely. And so want to take a little bit of a sidetrack here where you said, would have been first in the conference for Alyssa in the hurdles if not for 3 others ahead of her, where you have teams like Wheeling or West Liberty where they're very strong track teams. Is that something that can only be good for you guys and getting that top level of competition and pushing your athletes to go faster themselves or jump farther, throw farther, however it may be, to look at these other athletes that have been established Division II teams. You guys essentially in your first year in Division II with a little bit of time last year, but looking at how many young athletes you have and being like, hey, this is the top of this conference. You guys can get here if you really want to.
Oh, definitely. And, I mean, we're all about competing against the absolute best that we can. And this year is a little bit different with competing against conference schools throughout the whole year, because normally we would love to go up against the D1s and, like, up against much faster competition. But it's been great, like, especially this Wesleyan meet, to provide them with this level of competition, because athletes like Alyssa compete better when they're having to chase people down and when there's other faster athletes around them. And I mean, the same thing with Nick in that 400. It was a loaded 400 field and great opportunity to run quick in that. And so the more competition that we can run against that's going to provide us with faster times, the better it is, like come conference, because it is all about getting quick marks going into it so that we have good seating going in. But competing against Wesleyan, Wheeling, West Liberty, I mean, those are three of the top women's programs in the conference, and they just have more depth than we do right now. Like they have a lot more athletes like that are scoring points, and so we'll certainly get to that level in a couple years with the women's side. But it is nice to have athletes come in as freshmen and sophomores and be competing with these juniors, seniors that have been doing it for a while.
Absolutely, and certainly one to look at for the future. Want to get into a little bit of middle distance here with Daniel Foster, second in the 800, and he's just been a consistent performer all year for you guys in that middle distance. And you also you can bring in Braxton Clark and Devin Horseman Guy and the longer distances as well. But certainly as the cross-country head coach, you know these guys pretty well, and you know what they're going to give every single meet.
Yeah, Dan, like he was a little disappointed last week after West Liberty ran 2 flat .7 there, and he was really hard on himself, like expecting to run quicker. And so we go to Wesleyan and just wanted him to focus on the 8 this past weekend. And I mean, he got out just as quick as he did at West Liberty and ran about 56 for the first lap, and came through about 126, 127, and closed well. And once again, he did all the work in this race like he did the last time, and but he ran that 158.26, which is one of his best times ever. And so he's much more excited after this race, and he knows what he needs to work on. But I also know that once he gets into a much quicker race, because there's guys running 153s, 154s in our conference right now. Once he gets up against those guys, like he's going to be a competitor, and he's extremely comfortable right now going out quick, and so I know he can improve even more. And like we're still a few weeks out from conference, so we still haven't completed our peak yet, and that's why I keep telling these distance guys and gals that like the faster times are coming at the end of the season, and right now it's just preparing for that, and like it's all starting to come together though.
Certainly a build kind of where you start off the year and you might be a little bit rusty, not have your best times, work through it throughout the season, and then hope that you get your best out of your athletes there in the conference. I'm going to talk a little bit here now about the throws, and I feel like we're going to have this discussion about every week, where Michael Belker and John Kearns again impressing. Mike winning the discus and John right behind him in second. Mike again second in the hammer, John in third, and then John also finishing second in the shot put. And I'm not sure what else you can say about them for this year, but certainly two guys that have really carried this throwing program for a number of years now.
Oh, definitely. With that, like John even is starting to step up and take on the javelin, and he threw that for the first time this past weekend, and just trying to see if he can score a few more points at the conference meet with all the other points that he's going to get. And that did affect his hammer performance, like as he was about like 7 to 8 meters off from what he normally throws in the hammer. And so I think it was just with the javelin and the strain on the elbow with that event. But I mean, he's still looking good, still looking strong. Had a good day in shot put. Had a great day in disc. Like Mike Belker, he PR'd in discus by 0.5 meter, and they just every time they get into the throwing ring, like they're going to do something spectacular with it, and they're going to contribute to the team quite a bit. And so it will be sad when they're both gone after this year, but like I said, it's phenomenal to kind of witness that, and this dynamic duo that they have going on throughout all four throwing events, with John taking on the javelin too.
And so, talking about, female throwing now, Alexa Bradburn, really impressive for her fourth place finish in the hammer throw. And I looked at the final results from that, and I was amazed. Just a little bit of a sidetrack here, where the winner for that event threw a full 15 meters farther than the second place thrower, which is just stunning to me at the Division II level, where you have that big of a gap. But certainly Alexa showing her own strength in getting that result after being disappointed not to have a clean throw in the discus for her, but coming back in the hammer and performing really well.
Yeah, with Alexa, I mean, she's our only female thrower for the whole year pretty much, and now we've got a couple athletes that we're going to try out in some of the throwing events, and but I mean, she is the women's throws program and had a big PR in the hammer and did extremely well there. Unfortunately, discus didn't go as well, but she's still throwing some PRs in the discus. She just needs to work on staying inside the ring, and so she's had some foot fouls with that. But her performance has put her up towards the top of the conference in the hammer. We definitely think that she can get towards the top of the conference in the discus as well, and that athlete from Wheeling who threw 15 meters past everybody, hit an NCAA provisional, and I mean, it's great to see athletes like that in our conference, because that can lift everybody else up. And I mean, that's kind of what I'm accustomed to, being out out from the CCAA in California and the GAC in Oklahoma. We had really good throwers, and so to have somebody in our conference that can potentially compete at the national level, on our throw side, is going to motivate the rest of the field to get up there. And I know that with the athletes that we have coming in next year on the women's throws, we're going to be right up there too, and hopefully be scoring a lot of points with that side of things on the women's team.
Is that something where you can go, obviously you have your throwing coach here, but for the athletes that are coming in, of almost, I don't know about videos, but looking at athletes in these meets that can throw that far, obviously to get NCAA provisional, but looking at them and looking at techniques and kind of learning and looking at other people and how they do it, and using that to kind of combine it into their own throws and being successful with them.
Yeah, definitely learning from what others are doing. And I mean, even within the throwing events and within pole vault, the athletes usually like to help each other out and support one another, just across teams. I mean, those are the two big event areas where everybody's going to cheer no matter what happens. Whereas in the sprints and distance, it gets a little bit more competitive, and you don't want to see somebody do as well. But on the throws and pole vault side, the athletes really come together, regardless of what team they're on, and want to see each other improve, because they're such technical events that they are hard to master. And when you get a big throw or a big vault, everybody celebrates. And so, I mean, that's probably one of the coolest things about being around the throws and around the pole vault, is just that camaraderie amongst the athletes, because they will help one another out, give each other advice on what to do, what's working, what's not working. And sometimes even coaches too will come up and tell other coaches hey, your athlete just needs to work on this, and they'll start throwing further and stuff. And so, I mean, you usually don't see that too much on the sprints and distance side.
And so you talked about the pole vault, and you have Adam Smith and Justin Dunklin placing technically second and third, although they got the same height on their jump. And I believe the athlete from Glenville is a senior and has been one of the top in the conference. But Adam as a first year and then Justin as a sophomore, how impressed were you that they've been able to, where in previous meets it's been kind of, they're down maybe fourth or fifth, and there's guys above them, but they're improving throughout this season to come and get these results, second and third place finishes behind one of the top pole vaulters in the conference.
Yeah, they both PR'd, and so that was huge for them. And Justin, he's our decathlete, so of course, like the higher he can get, the more points he's going to score in the pole vault, which is going to help his overall score for the decathlon. And Adam, being a first-year athlete out of Smithsburg High School, this was a big PR for him, and so I just see them improve and like week after week. And like pole vault's one of those events where it's not guaranteed that you're going to go out there and get a PR because there's so many variables that can influence it. And like whereas other events are more consistent with their PRs, like or competing at your absolute best. I mean, you can have a bad day in pole vault and like no height, like because you only get 3 attempts at each height. And so to see them progress, and Coach Gerhold's done a great job working with these athletes and bringing in more athletes for next year, and because that's another event area that we see in the future that if we can load it up, we're going to score a lot of points. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. Like at conference, is how many can we place inside the top 8 so that we can make a run at the team title.
And certainly the pole vault, one of those events, and where you said earlier that very technically difficult to get down and do well. And we talk in the office all the time about, different sports that we each could be good at, and thinking, I could swing a bat and baseball or softball, whatever. But we all agree that pole vault's definitely something we could not do, not in our wheelhouse. So certainly props to them both for learning that and then now being successful in the conference. So you go in this weekend, you're at Charleston on Friday and Saturday, I believe.
Just Saturday.
Just Saturday now. Okay, so another opportunity to see what this conference has to offer, and some pretty nice facilities that I've been told at Charleston. There in the capital of West Virginia, and continuing to improve for you guys this year, and continue to try and get up the conference standings and set your times and your throws and distances for the conference meets.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it because this is a meet that every sport has that game that they circle on their schedule, and for me, like this meet at Charleston was the big one for us, and so I'm hoping that it lives up to the hype. It's going to definitely be strong in the distances, definitely be strong in the sprints, the throws, like just all around, and I feel like this will pretty much be like the conference preview like amongst a lot of the schools, because this is usually when you show what events your athletes are focusing on the most. And so I know come that 5K, like on both the men's and women's side, Braxton, like he's going to step up, but he's going to be going up against some of the best athletes in the conference for it. And Hannah Muir, like first year athlete, like she's hit a huge PR last week, and now this week we brought her down in the 1500 just to give her a little bit of rest, but like that 5K, like I'm hoping that she can go low 19s and become one of the best that we've ever had at Frostburg. And I said, but this weekend will be the weekend to really show like where we stand like in the conference, and it's going to be exciting now.
Yeah, certainly a little bit ironic there that, for most people, 1,500 meter, and you're taking that down a notch for Hannah, and most people will be like, I don't even know that I could run that much. But and certainly, obviously, Hannah, one of the best athletes that we've had come through here as a first-year athlete. But I want to thank you for taking the time out of your morning here, come and talk to me on the Bobcast, and again, wish you the best of luck at the weekend.
All right, thank you.
Wrapping up the Bobcast this week, and we're bringing in football, who we're glad to have back after a couple of weeks off. A 55-0 win against Alderson Broadus on Saturday. Coach, and how happy were you with your team's performance this week and getting back to playing football?
Yeah, just getting back to playing football was a lot of fun. Our players worked really hard over the last 3 weeks to have an opportunity to compete on Saturday, and it was just good. Hey, all around, feel good time, feel good atmosphere, feel good game.
And so you kind of screamed in our office yesterday about asking when your last shutout was, and I looked at, and it was October 13th of 2018, a 56-0 win over William Patterson. Certainly an impressive performance from your defense. After week one, you said you weren't really happy with their energy after the first quarter there, and certainly one that you can be happy with for this week of limiting to AB to no points.
Yeah, on the shutout, I had forgotten, and when we were Division III, we shut out William Patterson twice. We shut them out 56-0 and 23-0. Make you want to call William Patterson, see if they still have the same offensive coordinator all these years later. But I had forgotten that. Here's what Saturday was. It was our first defensive shutout as a Division II program. So good for us, good for our defensive staff, good for our players. Happy about that. What was the second part of your question?
That was actually the only part that I was going to mention was the shutout and how happy you were with the defense. Want to get into the offense then. Graham Walker, who came in at quarterback and was 16 for 23, 173 yards, 3 touchdowns, 39-yard rushing. You really can't ask any more out of your quarterback for that game. And you've been raving about him all season of how good he's been in practice, pushing Chad Palmer, who's a senior, and Graham coming in as a first year. But how happy were you with his performance? Where we don't have QBR here in our stats, but certainly one that would certainly be high up there.
Yeah, and he hit a pass or two that was dropped. He had one or two where he was late on the throw, and he could have his QBR would have been even higher had an even better game. Graham is as good as a first-year quarterback is going to be, and he's been in our program now for a couple of years because he redshirted and then COVID hit. We like 20-year-old freshman quarterbacks around here. Connor Cox was a really good one for us for a couple of years. If Graham stays the course and continues to be coachable like he is, he has a chance to be really, really good. He's only going to get better from here, and we're happy to have him. His future's bright, and our football team's future's bright. He as a freshman, he played so well on Saturday. We had a freshman tailback rush for 125 yards on Saturday. We've got a freshman tight end that's going to be as good as anybody in the country going forward. We have some freshman sophomore receivers that played on Saturday and did a nice job. Max Davis with his first punt returns of his career, his first touchdown catch of his career. Our future's bright on our offense. So and Graham's going to lead the way with that. But a good kid. Mom, Dad, I say this every single Bobcast. Mom and Dad did a nice job raising him. So they raised a nice, respectable young man that's coachable and works hard. He fits our football program.
And so we go into now the rushing. You mentioned Evan Branch, who ran for 123 yards, 10 yards per carry that he had, and part of a three-headed monster that you guys had. Malcolm Facey, 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. Isaiah Horn, 72 yards and a touchdown himself. Really, from the run game perspective, where you guys have been really successful for a number of years now, but those three really coming up to bat and all of them being successful.
Yeah, I like those three, but we're remiss if we don't name that offensive line and how well and how hard they played. But Gottlieb at left tackle and Greg Gaines at left guard, who's going to be as good as anybody in the conference. Michael Hudron played his best game so far at center, did a nice job there. Andrew Griffith and Kurt Hott at right guard, and then Brandon Dillard and Riley Pettit at right tackle, doing a nice job. And only one of those players is older than a sophomore. We're young up front. Our offense has a chance to be great going forward. But Andrew's a senior and one of our leaders and does a nice job. They opened up some huge holes. Okay, us two wouldn't have rushed for 125 yards on Saturday, but we'd had a pretty good game also. They did a nice job blocking up front. Malcolm Facey's a senior and been a good player ever since he's been here. Isaiah Horn plays hard on Saturdays and does a good job for us. And then Evan Branch, Evan Branch is going to become a complete back, but right now he's a change of pace guy. And as a freshman rushing for 125 yards, I don't know if he'll be named special. I don't know if he'll be named Rookie of the Week in the conference, but he should be.
And so you talked about the offensive line, and we've seen their growth throughout this season. Game 1 against Wheeling, a few mistakes, some penalties, just mental errors, and not being fully in, and then Notre Dame, and pretty much a tough a test as you can get in this conference a few weeks ago, and now this game, allowing those backs to run for that many yards. Is that something that you've seen their growth this year for being such a young unit, that they've continued to improve throughout this entire season?
Yeah, I think our entire team has gotten better as the spring season has went on, and we've had about 30 practices now in 3 games. But I think everyone has improved. But yeah, their mental and physical maturity as the season goes on, and what happens is the more football you play, the game slows down. it just slows down, and you're playing faster than you were playing a month ago, but everything around you just seems slower and it seems more clear, and that's what's happening with our offensive linemen up front. That bunch is going to lead us back to the playoffs, and we're going to make the Division II playoffs for the first time in school history on the backs of our offense and defensive lines.
And so we'll continue with the offense, getting to the receiving game. Malik Morris, who came back into the team, his first game since 2018, had an injury-riddled 2019, but came back in this game. 6 catches, 116 yards, and a touchdown. And I feel like every time I heard the loudspeaker at the stadium, it was Malik Morris making a play in some facet. But how big has it been for you guys, for him to come back into this team, caught for over 1,000 yards in 2018, missed all of last year, and now is back with this offense only to make them stronger?
Yeah, it seems like forever since Malik has played for us, and he's been around all the time, and he's fought through some nagging injuries and some things that have hampered his progress. Malik brings how do you say this, very talented, very mature player. Like you said, 3 years ago. Hey, 3 years ago as a sophomore, he had 1,000 yards receiving, and he's still with us and still playing well. Malik's as good or better than anybody in the conference at the wide receiver position. And then when you put him alongside Kyle Bielek, and we've got to get Kyle to play better than he played on Saturday, but when you put the two of them together, and it gives us you like the term two-headed monster, but it gives us a monster at wide receiver, because those other guys that were in there on Saturday, Donnell Milligan and Jawan Worrell and Max Davis, and I'm leaving out some. George Richardson, I'm leaving out a few of them. But if they're okay with playing a role and catching 2 or 3 passes on the day and blocking and all that, those other two are going to have 100 yards receiving, and we're going to have an opportunity to win some football games. Malik changes things now. So Logan, Malik changes things, and he is a different speed-wise, and he's a difference with his ball skills when the football's in the air. He's a different type player. We've been blessed to have Malik around here for a long time. Happy to have him on the field again.
Absolutely, and a couple of names that you mentioned. I want to talk about spreading the wealth with the passing touchdowns. Max Davis, Nate Forte, and George Richardson all caught a touchdown on Saturday. And is that something also where, it's teams sometimes will have their number one guy? I know for LSU this past season, Jamar Chase was kind of the guy. But for you guys to have it balanced so well with the passing game, all these receivers you've talked about, that can only really be a positive for you guys going forward as well.
Yeah, Saturday was a bunch of fun because our wide receiver core wasn't selfish. They weren't about themselves. It was a lot of fun. To be successful in college athletics, it has to be about the team. And when guys get selfish and it's not about the team, they hurt your team. On Saturday, we had a group of guys that were just in it for everybody else, and everybody got to spread the wealth. Now, Nate Forte, as a senior fullback, that being his first touchdown catch, as good a touchdown celebration as I've ever seen in my life, spontaneous and unscripted. But Nate's ran around here for 3.5 years and blocked for everybody and not asked for anything in return. For him to get to score on Saturday on a passing touchdown, on a receiving touchdown, good for him. I usually get after him about too much celebration, but it was hard to be mean to him on Saturday.
Certainly one that can put a smile on your face. As well as we'll go into the defense now, and Zach Strand, who's been such a standout player for a number of years now, is now, I look, the second leading tackler on the season, which you don't often see from defensive linemen. He had 7 on Saturday, 3.5 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks, and just a leader on that defensive front where he was missing his partner Carl this weekend, but certainly came out and just continued to stay on fire as he has throughout this season.
Yeah, but Zach's best game this spring. Still expect more of Zach. Zach's capable of making double-digit tackles per week, and he's capable of having 4 or 5 tackles for loss and 3 or 4 sacks in a game. Zach's best football is still to come here, and we're still working on some things here, but waiting on him to turn loose during his senior season and have a really, really big game.
And so the leading tackler on that day and for the season as well, Dylan Culpin, who had 8 tackles. He's got 26 on the year, and Zach has 14 as second most. Dylan also had a fumble recovery that he got. Only played in 5 games in your last season in 2019. He stepped up big time here for this season after losing a lot of that linebacking core. and he's just been a fantastic player for you guys this spring.
Yeah, Dylan's a program player, and he's a coach's kid, and his parents did a nice job with him. His father did a nice job of molding a really good young man who is a tough blue-collar football player. He fits our program. He just fits being around here. We knew Dylan when we recruited Dylan, and I drove to Salem, Virginia, and watched him play in a state title game when we were recruiting him, and really liked what I saw, how intelligent a football player that Dylan was. We knew he was going to play for us and be a good player. We just didn't know when. Well, when is now. So, but he is a good one, and he's 8 tackles a game, 9 tackles a game. He's really, really steady. You know what you're going to get from him. Does Dylan have some things he's got to improve on? Yeah, we've got to get him faster. We've got to get his hip explosion better than it is. But Dylan's going to make a lot of tackles in college for the rest of his career.
And here, as we kind of wrap up, I want to talk about special teams and your kickers, where they often go unnoticed in football, and it's really a shame in that they can be the difference between winning and losing in some games. But Dean Koontz, 7 for 7 in his point-after attempts, 2 for 2 on his field goals. And I know that you kind of talked with Matt the other day about you really want him to get Special Teams Player of the Week for this week, and certainly just Mr. Consistent the past couple of games now. He was really good against Notre Dame as well, and then this game coming up big with his leg, and also on the kickoffs, he's really a weapon there. But how happy were you for him this week?
Always happy for our players to have good games, but he's a team favorite, so it's Dane Koontz. They call it Dane time. So instead of saying game time, the kids yell Dane time. But he's doing well right now, and he practices hard and works on his craft during practice, and he's trying to get better every day. The players that work to get better each day, usually the cream rises to the top, and at some point in time they shine. Well, that Dane's a sophomore, and he's shining now. He's got some things to work on kickoff, so I'm not going to compliment that one yet. He's got to hit his spots a little better than he's hitting them, and we expect the ball to be halfway through the end zone, not at the goal line. So he's got to add some distance, and he's got to hit his spots a little better. But as far as PATs and field goals, he's doing a really nice job for us right now. He's just a good football player. So Dane is leading our kickoff team in tackles right now, which is how do you say this, a slam to the other 10 guys that are running down on kickoff because they're not doing their job. But that Dane can kick the ball to the goal line and then go tackle the kick returner. So that does a nice job. Pleasure to be around now. Good young man.
Yeah, absolutely not afraid to throw his body around. And also Sean Bliss, who had just 2 punts, and that shows, again, the efficiency of your offense, where he only had to punt twice. But he had a 52-yarder, and then the other one was 41 yards. One of them was inside the 20. But he's also been pretty consistent on his punting this year in setting up the defense to have good field position against the opposing offense. And what have you seen from him in his growth this year as well?
Yeah, this is the best that Sean's kicked the ball. Sean's punting it really, really well right now and hitting his spots. What did he average, 46 a punt on Saturday? But yeah, that's a really good average, but he's doing a nice job of that. And then Sean's our reserve quarterback. So Sean completed a pass on Saturday, and if we ever got in a jam, he would do just fine as a quarterback. But, yeah, this is the best that he's kicked the ball. And Sean Bliss and Dane Koontz, they're weapons. They're weapons on special teams because when they hit their kicks, they hurt the other team.
And so going into this week now, Saturday you have a pretty long trip out to UNC Pembroke, who has been a really solid program in Division II for a number of years. A few years ago had a couple of down seasons, but they're right back to being almost at their best. A really good team this year, just finishing in second there in the South Division, but certainly one that I can imagine that you guys really motivated to go and show what you guys can continue to do here at the Division II level.
Yeah, no, they've got a football program that's been ranked in the top 25 5 or 6 years. They've had a football team there 20-ish years that they've been in the top 25 6 or 8 of the 20 years. That they're a good football program. That they were helped by leaving. That they had a SAC conference schedule, even though they weren't in the SAC, and moving into our conference. The drop in play has helped them a little bit. But we're going to go down there, and in essence, we're playing the third place game in the conference, which doesn't sit very well with us because Charleston's in the championship game and we didn't get to play Charleston. But we're going down there and playing the third place game, and it'll be a big game for both teams. They have the best quarterback in the conference. So, and the wide receivers do a nice job of getting open for him. And number 13, I think's his name, is their number one receiver, and he's a good football player. But they've got a good football team, offensive line, running backs, and all of their players do their job. Tight ends do a nice job. But the quarterback is the key there, and they're good there. They turn around on defense, play really good team defense. So they run to the ball and tackle well, and they're physical, and they could give us problems. As good a linebacking core as we've seen this year. They do their job up front. They're really athletic in the secondary. It has, when we've turned the film on this spring, and because of COVID, we've only played 3 games, but we've had 6 opponents, because sometimes you're playing somebody on Monday or Tuesday and you're playing somebody else on Wednesday. For 5 hours this spring, we were playing Charleston. So would have liked that one to have went all the way through, but it didn't. We got changed. The Mountain East Conference and the administration and all that have done a nice job of navigating this pandemic and getting us games. But as you watch UNC Pembroke on film, there's no holes. There's no holes. Their coaching staff's done a nice job recruiting good players. That they've got good football players, and they're a problem. So their problem, good football players playing their first home game this spring. So they're 2-1 in 3 road games, which is good for them. But they're playing their first home game this spring. They'll be fired up. They're going to play hard.
Absolutely, and we look at kind of their facilities, and they have a really nice stadium down there at the bottom of North Carolina, and one that we're certainly excited for you guys to go and play there, and wish you the best of luck in that one.
What's our high temperature this week? About 61, 63. Chance of rain 5 days this week, although it'll probably only rain 1 or 2. So I think Pembroke's temperature all week is 73 to 75. No chance of rain, not a cloud in the sky this week. They'll have a good week of practice. They'll be ready for us on Saturday.
Absolutely, and we wish you the best of luck, and thank you for coming on the Bobcast this week to come and talk to us. Glad to have you back.
Logan, thank you for having me. Go Bobcats.